Valentine's Day was coming up, and my girlfriend and I decided to spend the weekend together. We lived in different cities, so we didn't see each other often. This trip was meant to make up for that. Just a quiet getaway. Nothing complicated. She found an AirBnB online. It was an old mansion on the outskirts of town. The listing said it was adults only. No children allowed. At the time, that didn't seem unusual. Some places are like that. When we arrived, the owner answered the door. He was a single man, probably in his 40s. He smiled a lot. He seemed friendly, calm. As he showed us around, he casually mentioned that he lived on the property too. That information stood out though. The listing had mentioned that 2 different guests could stay at the property at the same time. But from the layout, it became clear that the property could only house 1 guest, considering the owner lived there too. There was only 1 guest room, enough space for 1 couple. And him. That didn't make much sense, but I didn't think too deeply about it at that time. The house itself was large and old. The floors creaked loudly when we walked. The ceilings were unusually high. I felt uneasy, but I didn't say anything. I didn't want to start the weekend by overthinking things. Our room was at the end of a long hallway. Inside, there were stacks of magazines scattered around the room. Old ones, some torn, some yellowed with age. There was a box of old film cassettes with red covers. I didn't recognize the titles, but it was obvious what they were for. I remember thinking it was strange, but I didn't mention it. The owner stood in the doorway longer than necessary, watching me linger near the cassettes, almost with a suggestive smile on his face. Seeing me look up, he asked where we were from, how long we'd been together, and what our plans were for the weekend. Eventually, he left us alone. We showered, changed, and tried to relax. Later that evening, we heard movement outside our door. It wasn't loud, just the sound of someone shifting their weight. The house was old, and the floors creaked constantly. My girlfriend said it was probably nothing. I opened the door. The hallway was empty. Just outside our room was a small kitchenette that was in the common space. Everything looked normal, except for an oven glove lying on the floor. I was sure it hadn't been there earlier. Someone had been standing there. After that, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. That evening, we went out for dinner. At a local restaurant, we met another couple who were visiting the area. We talked for a while and got along easily. By the end of the night, we even discussed meeting up the next day. On the walk back, we mentioned that our Airbnb was on the next lane. They stopped walking. They looked at each other before one of them said they had stayed in an Airbnb on that same street earlier. They said they left because they felt like they were being watched. They didn't report anything. They didn't make a scene. They just quietly moved to a hotel. As they described the place, it became clear they were talking about the same house. My girlfriend immediately said she wanted to leave and stay somewhere else. I hesitated. I didn't want to assume the worst without proof. The other couple didn't say much more after that. We said goodnight and went our separate ways. When we returned to the mansion, we realized we had left the key inside our room. There was no way in without contacting the owner, something I would have preferred to avoid. I rang the bell. He opened the door quickly, as if he'd been expecting us. He smiled and said, "I was wondering what was taking you so long." That caught me off guard, and I looked up at him. He said, "I always know when my guests come in." I didn't respond. I remember thinking that he wasn't trying to scare us. He was stating a fact. He stepped aside and let us in. Back in the room, my girlfriend was visibly scared. I tried to stay calm. I was quite sure that this place deserved a thorough search for spy cams. I work in tech, and I'd once attended a presentation by a home surveillance company. I knew that hidden cameras showed up in places like this more often than not. I downloaded a camera detection app on my phone, but my phone shut off. The battery was dead. My girlfriend suggested turning off the lights. I told her that some cameras use infrared and don't need light. I used her phone instead. The app detected several unfamiliar networks. Before I could check them, the Wi-Fi disconnected. Her mobile data didn't work either. That's when it occurred to me that if someone really was watching us, they might already know we were looking. No wonder the Wi-Fi stopped working, I thought. But that meant there were cabled devices too, the ones that didn't need a Wi-Fi. I signaled her to move into the bathroom, turned off the light, and spoke quietly to reassure her. She was panicking. "Can't there be infrared cameras here?" she asked. "They usually use those in the bedrooms," I told her, "where there is more to watch in the darkness. Just lie down. I got this." I unplugged every cable I could find in the room, but the house was old. There were too many decorative objects, too many places to hide something. The ceilings were too high to inspect properly. I told myself that if we just stayed in bed and slept, nothing would happen. But the feeling didn't go away. It got stronger. That's when another possibility occurred to me. What if there were no cameras at all? Old houses sometimes have hidden spaces, crawlways, passages. That thought was worse. We lay in bed, pretending to sleep. Time moved slowly. Then I heard a sound. A low, steady hum, like a fan. There was no fan in this room. The sound seemed to come from the wall facing us. Without moving much, I tried to look around the place. That's when I noticed the large painting overlooking the bed. It was a dark charcoal piece depicting caves or mountains, the perfect camouflage for a lens or peeping holes. The frame was one of those Bolognese Renaissance cassetta, gilt on wood photo frames. Baroque. The sound was coming from behind it. I was sure. I wondered what might be behind the painting. My mind was actively searching for a plan to leave this place as soon as possible. I knew we were being watched. Right now. The place began to feel dangerous. The keys to the main gate were lying on the bedside table just above my head. I pretended to reach for my phone and grabbed the keys. I slid them in my pocket. I gently nudged my girlfriend. I knew she was awake. I whispered for her to start coughing. She did. "Don't stop," I told her. I sat up on the bed and said out loud that I would get her some warm water. I walked into the kitchenette and turned on the light. I started the kettle and spoke normally so it wouldn't seem strange. "Come, drink this." If the man were behind the painting, the kitchenette would be on his blind side. When she stepped out of the room, I leaned close and whispered one word. "Now." We waited a moment to make sure the house was quiet. No footsteps, no movement upstairs. Then we moved. Every step down the hallway sounded louder than it should have. We had to hurry, because the man upstairs would soon know something was wrong if we didn't return to bed. That is, if he wasn't watching us from another angle. I unlocked the front door as carefully as I could. We stepped outside and didn't stop walking until we were far down the street. We didn't go back that night. We walked until we found a hotel and checked in without asking questions. Neither of us slept. In the morning, we realized all of our belongings were still at the house. Our luggage, chargers, our phones. We didn't feel safe going back alone. So we called the police. We didn't accuse anyone. We didn't know how to. We just told them that we felt unsafe and wanted an escort to retrieve our things. 2 officers agreed to come with us. When we returned to the mansion, the house was quiet. No lights were on. The owner didn't answer the door. The officers knocked several times before letting themselves in. Inside, nothing seemed obviously wrong. Our room was exactly as we'd left it. The magazines were still there. The box of film cassettes was still by the dresser. The painting was still hanging on the wall. We gathered our belongings quickly. One of the officers asked if we wanted to file a report. We didn't. We didn't have anything concrete to point to. No cameras, no recordings, no damage, no proof. Just a strong hunch, an intuition. We left. A few days later, I searched for the Airbnb listing online. I couldn't let it go. I wanted to read the reviews from previous guests. Did anybody have a similar experience, or was it just us? But the listing was gone. I checked again weeks later. Still gone. I don't know if something had happened to the owner. But the sudden disappearance of the property from the Airbnb listing convinced me that our intuition wasn't misguiding us. I just hope the listing never appears again.
If you like this story, please do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more.